It is this exodus, just this wave of people who are leaving and have left the church. And it really happened during COVID, and then a certain concomitants came together. That has really happened. I mean, of just talking to you right now, I'm sure I can come up with 20 names easily.
Amazing.
Of people who are never going back to church. And at the root of that problem, the major cause of that problem is, with all due respect, it is the inconsistencies of church leadership.
That's it.
I'm not talking about leaders of a few hundred members or even a few thousand members. I'm talking of the most recognized church leadership brands in the world. Leaders of tens of thousands of people, biggest congregations in the world are giving prophecies. They are saying, God said, God told me on this day, at this season, this will happen. Mark my word. It is the God that I serve. And then the day comes, the season comes, and nothing happens. Not once, not twice, sometimes 3-4 times. God said, and this all over the place, nothing happens. And so people are now disenfranchised, they are disillusioned, they are disenchanted. Which kind of God? Who is lying now? Is it you that is lying, or this God? And if that is the case, but we've been listening to you for years, so have you been lying all the time? So I guess the question is, what's happening, Rev?
It's a leadership thing, like you said. It's a leadership thing. And see, when we address the leadership issue, there's a subtle dimension to it that people don't pay attention to or take for granted. Leadership culture. The dangerous thing about culture is that it influences your decisions without you even knowing, because it operates at the subconscious level. I say that a tree, when you look at a tree, what is in the soil around the tree is what is inside the tree. It's difficult to divorce yourself from your environment. So, practically in every sector in Africa, right, and then around the world, whatever the culture in a society influences religion. Religion has the power to influence culture, to shape it. But if you are not careful, culture also has the power to shape religion. Let me give you an example. So in Africa, like I said, we have the monarchical structure of government. It's like in the DNA of the average African. If you are not self-aware and purge yourself of it, that's the same structure you will produce. You produce in your family, you produce it in your business. When you get into government, it's the same thing you will maintain. So it's in our churches. It's just the way it is, right? The people want to worship their leaders. So, if you don't go with that culture, you may not have a large following. If you go countercultural, right, you will pay the price for it. Although eventually it will pay you, because you will have authentic, true leadership.
Sorry, let's stay there for 1 second. If you start a church in our culture, as it were, and you go the proper way, look, don't serve me, I'm not your God, I'm one of you. If you go that,
they will believe you are not anointed. The person that our people will respect or honor is the one that shows up, and you have 20 protocol officers coming with the person. Possibly the person even has mobile police people, two mobile police people that walk into the service with the person. Amazingly, that's the person that people will believe has the anointing. That's the one they want to touch the person's clothes while the protocol person is pushing them away and they're falling down and all that. Sadly, because of the way culture works. It works, like I said, you won't be aware of it, but it will shape your values and be influencing your decisions. So, again, because there is no equality, the powerful are very powerful, the powerless are very powerless, right? So, rather than empower people to become also powerful, it pays you to keep them where they are while you dispense favors to them, because then you have a large following. What are the kind of messages we preach? God will put food on your table. God will, which runs contrary to even the Bible itself, right? But then you go to societies where there's equality, you see that those things are taken care of. It's the easiest thing, at least for you to get food to eat and for you to get a roof over your head, right? People are empowered and they have a voice to hold leaders accountable. So it's risky in Africa, therefore, for you to come out and say we're equal. Right? They will think something is wrong with you.
As a church leader,
as a church leader, they will think you don't have anointing, and all that. And then we flaunt wealth, material wealth. Our people worship money because of the level of deprivation and poverty around. You want people to believe you're powerful, you're anointed, coming in your Rolls Royce. Even if you've only paid down part payment in it, that you came out, or with some powerful dressing and clothing, you go contrary to those, which actually is what Christ did, and you would have to be patient, because eventually, if it's the truth you're building, it will set people free. You will get the results. So that was the part we had to take. Okay. So I say that to answer your question, that we have a big leadership scenario, but we must approach it also with empathy, because those powerful leaders are doing things the best way they know how to. They're products of the culture. The one mistake, though, that I see us making with that kind of a structure is that we don't allow the younger generation to speak soon enough. We don't value them. We practically obliterate them. We stay too long. We don't practice succession. We don't understand the power of succession. At some point, you disconnect from the younger generation because their needs are no longer your needs. Therefore, there's dissonance. Like the older generation in Africa right now is just not getting the Gen Zs, right, at all. These people who were practically born with phones in their hands or with technology, and so on. The older generation doesn't even understand that the people online are as powerful as the people they are looking at physically in their churches and so on. Let me give an example. So in this time, we created a persona for our target, right? We call the male version the Lagos Andy, the female version Lagos Angie. And that helped us to focus, everything in this time is targeted at those persons. When we created that persona in 1999, I was within the age range. I was Lagos Andy. So you didn't need to tell me the needs of Lagos Angie. I attacked them with passion. Today, I am not Lagos Andy. I am not Lagos Andy at all. I left that level a long time ago. So the likelihood is, so it's taking me effort now and leadership. It's taking me having to listen to younger people to know what their needs are, to be sensitive to them and to address them. So I pointed out to our management team in Daystar, said, look at this table. Almost everybody's out of the Lagos Andy age range. And those are the people who are supposed to lead. We're about to lose them. Because if they don't see themselves on the stage, we're likely not going to attract them anymore. So we actually have new people coming on board in the next few months that are within that age range. So that's the mistake, I would say, that the older generation is making. At the time when we should become coaches, we're still struggling to be players in the field. There's no need. We need to push the younger generation forward now. Then the level of misunderstanding will be less. They would even help us to understand what's going on better than us still playing by the old rules, right? And then being surprised. The younger generation right now, okay, let me give an example. So I was teaching in church just a few years back, just before COVID, and I made this assertion. I was teaching on the ego. And I made this assertion that I'd been hearing for at least 30 years. The eagle is the highest flying bird in the world. The next day, a church member sent a text message to Pastor Nika and said, I know I don't have the right to correct Pastor Sam, okay? But he said something in church yesterday that the eagle is the highest flying bird in the world. That statement is not correct. In fact, when Pastor Nika told me, she told me gently, right? As she was saying it, I was on my phone checking on Google. The person was right. The eagle doesn't even come within the first 10. highest flying bird. I went back to church and I apologized. I told them, this is what I said. This is what one of you said. I checked it up. So that's why we need to allow younger people into leadership, honestly, because we don't realize you say something now that you said before and nobody would even bother, they will swallow it. They are checking on Google as you are saying it. And now they are seeing hypocrisy. That's why people are leaving the church. Again, because people are holding their ground. The leaders are holding their ground. What do you mean? And these young people have gone to check. All those in the original Greek that you were saying before, because nobody understood Greek. If they go online now, they will get the correct meaning of what you're saying. They're seeing a lot of hypocrisy in leadership. They want authenticity. And this is just a call on all of us, honestly, to practice leadership with honesty. And nobody says we should be perfect. People are not expecting us to be perfect, but they want us to be perfectly honest. When I owned up to that error on the ego, then I was getting text messages and emails, and people were saying, wow, thank you for doing that. I never thought a pastor could do that, to come back and admit that they were wrong. You could just easily have glossed over it, forgotten and moved on, and all that. Yeah. So people just want that authenticity, and they also want accountability. They don't want a scenario where we're raising funds in church. We say that God wants them to be rich, and then at the end of the day, they find out we're the only ones that are getting rich. And they're getting frustrated. And the environment is changing. We just need real leadership.
But by the way, what is the highest flying bird in the world?
The griffon vulture. It flies. Pilots have sighted it at 37,000 feet above sea level.
Wow.
The same level where commercial airliners fly. That's
amazing. Amazing.
I can never forget that experience.
No, you shouldn't. They corrected the pastor. No, you shouldn't. Look, let me tag just one question to this thing. Right. So when people come out and say God said, and they beat their chest and say it with all, in my own, I concede that there are many things that I don't know. In fact, I concede now more and more every day that I don't even know God as much as I thought I did. I really don't understand this guy like I thought I. But the one thing that is constant is that I'm at least fearful of this guy. There's an expression we use in Yoruba, that it's basically you're toying with God. You're toying with God's sword of vengeance. I just can't. There are just certain things that for me, maybe it's because I was brought up in a Christian home. I'm just afraid, even if I don't really understand the God. When people come out in the name of this God, I mean, I'm asking you as one who's in that area, because you have seen people. Is it that they've lost sight, or they were never in it, or they lack fear? I mean, what makes a person come out in the name of this God that you, by your own saying, have read the words that he consumes like fire?
Right.
What makes you come out as a man of God and say things? I don't get. Is it that they didn't hear, or they heard wrong, or what's going on here? That's what I don't get. I will be too afraid.
Various reasons, honestly. Various reasons. First, faith is a business of risk. This hearing from God thing is subjective, right? It's subjective. It's not like you really saw God like that physically or something. Hebrews chapter 5 verse 12 says that there are those who by reason of use have their senses exercised to discern between good and evil. So just like when you hang around someone long enough, you get to recognize them. Like if I heard your voice through a door, I would recognize your voice, right? Because I've been hearing your voice for years. So it's the same thing with walking with God. nothing says, see, we're still human, so nothing says that we cannot make mistakes. The important part is for us to be able to come back and say, I thought I had, but it looks like I missed it here. That's authenticity, that's honesty, for God's sake, and nobody is supposed to kill anybody over that. But once you tie your esteem to your status, to the outcome, right? That's why I say faith is a business of risk. It says, say this, you say it. That's your own part of the job. Making it come to pass or not come to pass, that's not your own part of the job, right? Yeah. So you wait on him, you trust him to do what he said he will do, and of course he will do what he said he will do. It's a risk. So, and then if you find out that you made a mistake, say that you made a mistake. Now, so where people, sometimes leaders think that people expect us to be perfect. I used to think so too before. I did not know how to be vulnerable before. Admit my weaknesses. I thought people would lose respect for me until I began to read the books of Pastor Yonggi Cho in South Korea, whose church at that time was the largest single congregation in the world. I read his books and I saw him admitting some of his mistakes. I could not believe my eyes. Did this man really read this book? How can the pastor, the most powerful pastor in the world, be writing this kind of it? Didn't he realize people would lose respect for him? But eventually, he also explained it in one of the books. He said he found out that if he was vulnerable and authentic with his people, he said what it built was trust. He said he found out nobody could lie against him in town. If they wanted to spread a false rumor, his church members would say, you don't know our pastor. If this thing was true, he would tell us himself. I say, wow. So, if they are calling you Kuvabaye, Ibakeji, Orisha, you are next, you know they are deceiving you. It's a big lie. Tell them you are a human being, my friend. The example I saw in the Bible, Peter, the day Cornelius, a Gentile, had Peter come into his home. It was an angel that appeared to Cornelius, mentioned Peter's name, and gave this man the address of where Peter was staying in another city. And it was correct. So as Peter stepped into his house, the man just fell down. And the Bible says that the man worshipped him. How did Peter respond? Most leaders would absorb the worship, of course. It's not easy to get to this position. Peter just grabbed the man by the shoulder, jacked him up and he said, stand up. I'm a man like you. That's what leaders need to learn to do. There's nothing special about you, my friend. It's just the grace of God. It's a privilege. It's an opportunity. Don't lose your humanity. Okay, stay level-headed. Stay humble. Don't allow hubris to take you to the place where you want to go. If not, before long, they'll be singing, I'm a job for you, until they throw you into a pit. Yeah, so it is possible for us to make mistakes in hearing. I should say too, though, that the things that come with success, the money, the power, the influence, if you allow those to get into your head to become so important to you, that you would compromise your values to get more of the power, of the money, you're likely to make mistakes. You're likely to make serious mistakes, because in order to sustain, that image, in order to keep the money coming, in order to not lose what you had, you would have to lie. You would have to say something God did not say, like He said it, and so those things come in sometimes.
Rev, thank you. I was laughing when you said this whole hearing from God thing is a risky business.
Right?
Is that you now say that because your own is to say, His own is to do. I now remembered Jonah.
Right.
And a lot of people don't know that is actually one of the reasons why Jonah ran away. Because that's what Jonah said in the end. Jonah said, you see, this is why I did not want to come for you. Because I know that you can change your mind. I've said this thing now, and this thing is not now going to happen. And the Israelites who are back home are not here to see how this thing has played out. So in their eyes now, it will be as if I lied when I told them that God said that Nineveh will be destroyed. Now you have changed your mind. Now I'm a liar.
Right.
So that's why. Okay, so I get that. So don't double down. If that happens, come back and say, look, I thought I got it. I didn't get it. Okay. Rev, do you have 5 more minutes?
Sure.
Okay, great. Because I was just, look, you've said this thing in church for years, but it seems that now it's a pandemic, really. And I don't want to, look, I'm not trying to assail anybody's faith or cast aspersions on how anybody worships or prays. Look, that's not my place to do. It's just that for me, God cannot be deaf. We seem to be living in an era now of very, very powerful, strong prayers. Shouting, it's always been our way, really. But now it seems to have come out into the mainstream. Shouting prayers every morning, shouting, screaming, shaking, sweating, jumping. Maybe it's become even more pronounced for me now that I have had the privilege of living in this United States for some 4 years now, and I've seen a system that works, and I've been to their churches and they don't do that. And they were the ones that brought us this religion now. So where did we get this our own shouting and screaming and jumping and sweating? What's going on here?
Right. Okay. Culture again, the power of culture. Primarily from scratch, our cultures always believed in God, believed in the invisible, believed in the fact that it's supernatural powers that control how things go down here. We've always been heavy on making sacrifices and things like that. So that part of Christianity we caught. And the more difficult things get in the environment, then the more of that, the more we tend to rely on that. Call on God more, pray some more. So which is okay. People have different temperaments, right? So let them express themselves. God doesn't have a problem with that. The only thing I just plead for is the need for us to balance that power side of God, that miracle side of God, to balance it with the wisdom side of God. That balance is what they found in this part of the world. That when God put man down here, he created a creator. The first introduction we have to God in the Bible is his creative ability. In the beginning, God created. And then the same God says, let us make man in our own image after our likeness. He created us to be creators. Whenever you're calling on God to come and create what he has given you power to create, you are wasting your time. Period. That's why with all the prayers, he's not created roads, he's not built houses, he's not built our economies for us, he's not built factories. He will not. Just forget it. That's why I'm pleading for the balance. It's not good to swing on the wisdom part and to leave the power side, the sovereignty of God, because man will always confront situations that science cannot handle or resolve. So we will need God. But we should not swing to the extreme. Pendulums have this tendency of swinging to the extreme, and human nature just behaves like that. You know, it's that you come to this, but the best thing is to stay in the middle. Africa, it's a prayer. If I'm begging, it's a plea. We're not going anywhere. The improvement in the economy, it's not rocket science. If you don't have something to sell, you can't have money. What do we have to sell to the world? Bicycles. We're not creating, not to talk of motorbike, before we move to cars, right? We've got to be innovative. It's the way it works. And we're not going to do that if we're not ready to promote the value of thinking, the value of wisdom, the value of knowledge, the power of principles. So I would not have any problem if we were as intense in promoting knowledge and skills and wisdom as we were in praying with intensity, I will not have any problem.
You know what I think? If we were that way, if we were intense in promoting knowledge and wisdom and skill, we wouldn't need Abi, we wouldn't need to be praying and be shouting and be stomping like that.
Our prayer points would even be different.
Yeah.
Our prayer points are tied to meeting basic needs.
Yeah.
Like food. They've cracked those issues. The people that think with innovation, what the farmer will produce over 1 acre, hours it would take 10 to 20 to produce it. Yeah. Where there's no wisdom, you must exert more strength.
Yeah, where the axe
is dull, you must exert more strength. Yes, we're not efficient.